and that's to conduct a public hearing to adopt an ordinance amending portions of the Allen Land Development Code relating to Section 6.06.11 of solar panels. Lee Battles.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. In 2012, the City Council adopted an amendment to the Land Development Code to add some regulations for solar panels. That's the first time that we added those regulations. Prior to that, we really didn't have any guidance in terms of the installation for solar panels. We did begin to see an interest and requests to install them, and so we started a process, did research, had workshops, and put together the ordinance that was adopted in 2012 and has been in place since then. So basically what we have today has been in place for and operating for about 4 years. We recognize that over time things change, the industry changes, technology changes, and it makes sense to go back and evaluate our ordinances. In this case, we were approached by a group of called solar advocates and residents that requested we take a look at the ordinance and evaluate it and consider making some changes specifically to lessen some of the restrictions that were in the ordinance. So we did that review, research, and had a workshop with the City Council, got some input, and are here this evening with a proposed amendment to the Land Development Code that does a few things, and so I'll go over what some of those are. I'll first point out that in your packet, we do kind of a red line version when we do Land Development Code, but there were so many changes, it's more of a wholesale replacement of the section. So you have in front of you the proposed section in its entirety, and then the current ordinance as well for comparison. So probably the first thing you'll notice is the proposed ordinance is considerably shorter than what's in place right now. The current ordinance is about a page and a half, and this is less than a page. So we were able to streamline and take several things out of the ordinance, which whenever we can actually make it shorter is a good thing. So we were able to do some of that, mainly by taking out some of the application and submittal requirements. Some of them were redundant of other things in the code, or the building code, and so we were able to really streamline just the language in there and make it a lot simpler. So going through the ordinance, first looking at solar panels as a use, we currently, and in the proposed amendment, permit solar panels by right in all zoning districts as an accessory use. So that means anywhere in the city of Allen, you can install a solar panel by right. No zoning request changes, no SUPs are required. It's go to the counter in the building department with your plans that meet the requirements, get that reviewed and get your building permit and do your installation. So in terms of process, it's fairly streamlined. It's about as simple as we can make it in terms of getting a permit. We have a specific plan review checklist for solar panels that we ask everybody to use, so the requirements in the submission are outlined there. So I think that is a pretty streamlined process, no extra steps. Now moving into some of the installation and placement requirements, starting with rooftop installations. In this amendment, solar panels would be allowed on both primary structures and accessory structures. So in today's ordinance, it's primary structures only, so only on the house. But we recognize there are applications where putting solar panels on a patio cover, an accessory building makes sense. It's a good spot for them and good exposure. So we've expanded the location in which solar panels can be installed to include accessory structures where previously they were not. So that's additional opportunities for installations. B is a provision that solar panels shall not directly face a public street. This is a provision that's been in since 2012. This is probably the provision that we've received the most comment on. We've received a lot of comment concern that this restriction limits the exposure that solar panels can get on some roofs and some installations. We've also received comments that preserving the visual integrity of the neighborhood is important, and that by allowing the installation of solar panels on the front of houses, they're visible and have a visual impact on the neighborhood and therefore are undesirable. So again, differing interests in the community when it comes to that. We feel like this ordinance is proposed in a way that tries to balance those interests, as we usually do when we adopt ordinances. So it provides a lot of opportunity for the installation of solar panels in different locations, but at the same time trying to mitigate concerns about the visual impact by limiting that one location. C requires them to be basically parallel to the roof, so they have to be flat with the roof, so they're not cantilevered up or tilted. That creates both some wind load concerns as well as aesthetic concerns. So all the installations that you see in these pictures are parallel to the roof. And then D is for flat roofs, and in that case, they're allowed on flat roofs. We treat them like any other type of mechanical equipment that gets installed on top of a flat roof, in that there's got to be some kind of a parapet wall, but they are allowed to extend above the height of the building by about 10 feet. So they're treated like everything else, and I'm not aware that's been a problem. And then on the screen are just some examples of solar panels on the front of houses. And I think everybody's seen the pictures, but just to include those. So the next section has to do with ground-mounted installations. This is another area where we're lessening the restriction, increasing the opportunity for installations. In the ordinance today, it is roof only, and so ground-mounted installations are not permitted. In the proposed ordinance, it would allow for ground-mounted installations. There's some examples on the screen. Some are kind of the lean-to type design, and there's a picture of a pole-mounted. The only provisions would be that they meet applicable setbacks for accessory structures, so you can't put one in your front yard, so they'd be in the side or the backyard, and that they are separated by a solid fence, meaning that your yard has to be fenced, or there has to be a fence around the area where the solar panel is located. And again, that's to mitigate visual impact and also additional safety and security. You know, almost all of the backyards in the city of Allen have a fence around them today, so we feel like the impact of that is probably pretty negligible for folks that want to install a ground-mounted system. And then finally, some additional requirements. One is we specifically reference the 2015 International Building Code and the 2015 International Fire Code, because those codes have a specific language in them about how much of the roof is covered, separation from the edges and the ridge lines, and we wanted to just go ahead and utilize those provisions. The reason we specifically called out the 2015 is because we haven't adopted the 15 yet. We're still under the 2009, but moving toward adopting the 2015. But to get us until there, we wanted to go ahead and reference it specifically in this provision. Once we adopt the new building codes, it'll all sync up. So the next provision has to do with glare. Not a problem that occurs very often, but in research, it's not a problem that never happens. And we basically just want to have the tools in place so that if a nuisance situation occurs, we're able to address it. This is not something we'll go look for. It's not part of the design review process, but should we have a situation come up where either reflection or glare is causing a nuisance between neighbors, like anything else, we want to have language in place that lets us go and deal with that. Maintenance, as with all the other things on property, deterioration over time is a potential concern. Most of our residents do a great job taking care of their properties, but occasionally we run into a situation where we need to get involved in maintenance, and especially since we're talking about electricity, we think it's important that we have the ability to go out and deal with this situation should it arise. And sometimes we have vacant properties for a while, and we want to at least have the tools in place to deal with that. So again, those are there for us to use should we have a situation where we need to deal with a potential nuisance or hazard. That's it for the ordinance. Let me touch on a couple of other items. One is HOAs, because that's a question that's consistently come up. And in 2011, the state legislature did pass a law that basically prevents HOAs from restricting the installation of solar panels. So HOAs really can't do that anymore. So just wanted to make sure everybody understood, that HOAs are not really able to restrict the installation of solar panels today. We also looked at other cities, as we always do, to see what they're doing. And as we usually do, we found a mix of ordinances and rules in place. Some cities take kind of a minimal approach. They really lean on their building code, and they lean on maybe whatever rules they have in place for accessory structures. rather than having a separate section in the code that specifically addresses solar panels. So you have to kind of go dig and see how they're regulating accessory structures sometimes. But some cities do that, and some cities have a separate section in their code specifically addressing the installation of solar panels, as we do in ours. And then we find a variety of different rules in there. In terms of having solar panels on the front or directly facing a street, there are not very many cities that are doing that, but there are a couple. Carrollton has some language in theirs. Rowlett has a prohibition similar to ours. Melissa has a district. So there are a handful of cities doing that, but majority of them are not doing that. So it's not that it's completely unheard of, but it is unique to a few cities. Some cities have other provisions that dictate even the color of solar panels. So again, a different way to attempt, I think, to address maybe some of the aesthetic concerns. So again, a variety of things out there on that. And I think really what all that means is cities are in a position where they have the authority. We haven't been preempted from the state legislature in regulating these. We have the authority and the responsibility of deciding how to best regulate these types of installations in a way that best fits our community and the interests of our residents. And so that's what you see cities, I think, trying to accomplish in their own way. We also looked at how our current ordinance may have impacted the installation of solar panels, because there's been concerns expressed that our ordinance is restrictive, and that if you have a house facing a certain direction, you may not be able to install solar panels at all. And we really wanted to look and see if the installations over time seem to indicate that there really is an issue there. So I went back to basically the beginning of 2015, looking at the last 18 months. We've had 47 solar panel permits come in that time period, which was a pretty good number. I looked at each one and what direction the house faces, and really found a distribution. So about 35% face north, 25% face east, 20% face west, 20% face south. So it didn't seem to be heavily skewed in any particular direction, but indicated that houses facing all different directions at least are installing solar panels, recognizing that there are several variables that go into how efficient your system ultimately might be, including both the direction of your house, but also the design of your roof and your ridge lines and your slopes. So, but that didn't indicate anything that at least was overly prohibitive in terms of people out there today installing solar panels at all. So I wanted to show you a few pictures to go along with that. So these are pictures of houses in the city of Allen that have had installations done, and just to kind of give you a feel of what's going on out there today. This is a house that faces east. This is a house that faces north, so you can see the panels are placed on the south side. Here's a house that is facing south, and so the panels are up here on what would be the north side of the house. And this is actually a house that's on a corner. And they did go ahead and install solar panels on this back section. This is also a case where it looks like they have an accessory structure that under this amendment they could add some more on there as well. And then here's a couple more houses that face south. And I wanted to kind of point out a couple of things. One is, in our implementation of that requirement, we try to be as reasonable as possible, understanding that interpretation has evolved because every roof is different, every house is different, so there's no way to write an ordinance for every roof design. So we try to be very reasonable in how we apply this. So this house right here, you can see the solar panels come out toward the front, but those are roofs that slope toward the side, so we don't consider those front facing, but it does provide a lot of area for installation. And actually on that house, there's not a lot of roof sloping toward the south at all. So there wouldn't be much opportunity for south facing on that particular design. So again, I think this goes back to we've tried to put an ordinance together that provides opportunities for the installation of solar panels in a variety of ways, at the same time balancing concerns that we know exist in the community about the visual impacts that these might have. And so again, we've tried to find that place that we think does a little bit of, addresses both of the concerns as much as we can, and meet the interests of our citizens. We know there are a lot of different things that we have permits for that we deny for various reasons. We've denied swimming pools because the arrangement of the lot or the house, they can't meet the separation requirements, they can't, get out of easements, whatever it is. We deny patios and outdoor kitchens for various reasons. We deny expansion of houses because of the lot or the setback. So there are a lot of things that people come in and try to do, and because we have ordinances that attempt to balance the desire for people to do stuff on their property with the need to mitigate potential impacts and nuisances, not everybody can do everything that they want to do. So again, this is the ordinance we've put in place that we hope will at least let us move forward with allowing additional solar panel installations, but also address some of those concerns. Be happy to answer any questions, and I think there's some other folks that want to speak to you.
Don't have any questions, Lee, before the public hearing? We'll go to the public hearing at this time.